Here.
Commissioner Young,
Here.
Commissioner Parker,
Here.
and Commissioner Nemeth will be joining us
Right
shortly.
there.
Is here.
Look at that.
Okay, good. And Commissioner Wolf is not able to join us today.
Now we will approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now we will open up to our first public commentary. Please limit yourself to 3 minutes and agenda items only.
Well, I like to be prepared, but I'm not really prepared. Okay, so I just want to say, it looks like we're trying to make this happen that we've all been talking about, but there's this and that happening. So there's some talk about still allowing 3 of us to have an exception.
We need your mic on.
mic's just not on.
Okay, now can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I like to be prepared and have it written down, but I don't. So there's talk about still allowing 3 of us to temporarily get annual stalls, but maybe having it happen after this year's walkout. So the reason why it's extremely important to me to have it happen at the beginning of this year's walkout for me is because 7 growers are going to jump over me, and those 7 growers take 10 stalls. And this year, when I pick in the morning, there's not 10 extra stalls where I would still get a stall anywhere near where I want to get, and where typically if I'm bumped down to a lower area, I make less money. Not, it's always different, but I do make less money. And, in my planned speech, I was going to say, if you're in line at the post office behind 20 people and you get to take cuts in front of one person, it doesn't really make that much difference to you. You're still behind the 19 and you get to take cuts in front of one. But if you're one person standing in line and 20 people get to come in and take cuts in front of you, it's a huge impact on your day. And this isn't my day, it's my life. It's 23 years. 10 stalls are gonna jump in front of me in August that I'm gonna get bumped down, and I'm gonna make less money that I used to pay my bills every single week, that I've spent 23 years where I should be moving up this. I can understand if maybe we move a little bit slower, but this is a lot. 10 people are gonna jump in front of me. I'm gonna get totally booted out of the area. Customers will come up to me in September and say, "Oh, you didn't come this year," because I got booted over there and they can't find me. It doesn't seem like that big of a market, but every single day people, say stuff like that to me when I've been on the middle aisle for a few months. It's just, there's got to be a way to figure out how to do it so that, to have 10 stalls jump in front of me, yeah, I'm only one person who's going to be affected, but I'm one person who has been affected all of these years by this. The reason why one person needs to be given a hand up is because one person has been pushed down, and I do think that we should find a way to help a couple more people as well during this process, but I don't think bringing me back down again is an acceptable way to do it. I think we need to find a way. It's just, I can't express how important it is to me. It's my livelihood, and I don't know what to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Christine Shubra. I'm an artisan vendor. And I guess I don't understand why you want to wait until after the 2019 move up when there were 3 stalls that weren't taken last year.
So, sorry, just to really quickly interject, this is all happening very quickly, changes to what we had talked about before in the process, so the referencing waiting versus doing it now, which I want to give you guys 2 opportunities to comment, but I will explain more when we get to that portion if it doesn't make sense right now.
Okay. So anyways, I've attended for a long time, and I've abided by all of the same rules as the growers. And it seems somewhat discriminating in that Artisans have been at the market since the early 60s. And we've abided by all of the same rules. We have to be inspected, we pay the same fees, and yet when it comes to stall assignment, we're neglected in the move-up process. There is already There's already a cutoff point as to how many artisans can attend the market, so we're not going to turn this into an artisans market. But we are businesses just as you are businesses, and we also use this as our livelihood. And so it is an impediment to not be assigned a permanent booth. I have been coming since 1995, and I still have people say, "Oh, I've never seen you here before." Well, I've been here, I'm just never in the same place, and that's okay, because at least I do get a spot, but for the vendors that are in the same place, they do have customers that don't have to seek them out because they do know where to find them. So I am very appreciative of the fact that you are reviewing this and looking at a process to give us even footing on this. But I know that it's a change, and I know that there are many people that don't want the change at all. So I do appreciate all the work that you've put into this, but I would still like to see it go forward before next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say one quick thing is that these 10 stalls that will move in front of me, it's not like they're going to get into the pool before me and then I get to jump in the pool and then we're all in the pool together. They will move into the 10 spots before me, and they will permanently stay before me for the rest of our lives.
Thank you.
Now we will approve the minutes from the May meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, presentations? No presentations. Now we'll move on to regular business, beginning with the rule change recommendation.
So first of all, I'd like to note the packets I sent and that were online. This is, like I said, an ongoing discussion and things. So the lawyer was able to review the wording in the meantime and did have a few changes that he recommended. So I have the second one that he suggested there for you in your packet in red below the original one you already received. Secondly, there are two things we're really talking about today. We're talking about this rule change, and then we're talking about the artisan stalls. And the rule change has to happen in order for us to be able to respond to the situation with the artisan stalls, so this has to happen first. However, we need to look at it as its own thing and, make sure that we feel comfortable with what we are changing to the rules and that it's going to work for us in the long run in other situations as well. The process for this is if we agree and decide to recommend it, then this will go to council and they will have a month to look at it, and if they have any objections, come back to us and let us know. If there is no changes that they have, then it will become our operating rules. So I'm just going to go open that up there for those who are watching at home, since it did not make it into the final packet, since it's a public meeting. But if anyone has comments, let me know. Okay, so basically this was a change to the way we assign stalls at the market to allow us to be more flexible based on what we thought works well for the market. Because stalls change over time, the thinking was we might need to respond differently depending on the year. So the proposed change is to add that the market manager may make a temporary or seasonal exception to the stall rules 5A through 5F above in order to facilitate the efficient operation of the market after receiving a resolution of support of the exception by the Public Market Advisory Commission and the approval of the exception by the Community Services Administrator. So there was concern that we didn't want to just be changing these rules kind of depending, a market manager here, another manager comes in, they want something different, they can just easily change the rules. You know, the hope was these two, by having three parties agree to it, this would sort of be a check. So you've had a chance to look at it. Are there any thoughts or concerns?
I have a question.
Okay.
Who's the Community Services Administrator?
Yes, so they are sort of in charge of Parks and Rec.
Okay.
So a member of the city. They also act in other circumstances and situations as sort of the final decider for like applications. If someone has a grievance and disagrees with the decision, they can be the final say. So.
Okay. So if we move to change this, then that would be approved by council.
Yes.
But let's say that's approved by council and the change is made, then any exceptions going forward they don't go to council, they go to the market manager and the commission and the county services administrator. Those three
things.
Okay, got it.
Yes, any exceptions to this section of the rules. And this section applies to annual vendors can have 3 stalls annually. An artisan may have 1 stall. Maximum artisan stalls are 12. This is where this artisan discussion comes in. And then, yes, and then it's also worded to make a temporary or seasonal exception so that sort of as this is a one-time thing, because we feel like it addresses the concerns of the moment. But we would have to come back again and have all 3 sign off again if we wanted to do it again.
So it says temporary or seasonal exception. So does that mean that next season they would have to again request? So this would come up, it wouldn't be the exception would be made and they've got the stall forever and ever, amen. It would be this season and then next season requested again and next season requested again.
Yes, I think so. Maybe that needs to be more clear.
Yeah, I think there could be more clarity on that, and I don't know what the legal
Okay.
language would be, but if it was something like, instead of temporary or seasonal, it would be within the fiscal year exception or something, to be really clear that it only lasts 1 year and would need to be.
What about a one-time exception?
Sure, one time. I'm wondering, too, if it could even go extra, just the extra mile to say something to the effect of if the market manager decides to make the same exception, say 2 fiscal years in a row, that will then need to incur a new rule change to A through F, which would have to go through city council. You know what I mean? Because, so like plausible scenario, 1 year a market manager says, I'm going to make a one-time this year only exception and change the annual vendor status for artisans and producers to be half and half. So, like just, something that could be really like radically different that probably wouldn't be approved through PMAC and the Parks and Rec head. But if that were to be done 2 years in a row, some trigger where then it's like, okay, well, if this is going to happen more than 1 year, it's not really a one-time thing anymore. Now it has to go through the process we're doing now that is then city council approved.
That makes sense, but I wonder if it's enough to have the 3 parties signing off on it to, to facilitate that automatically. I mean, I think I'm not quite sure, because I could see it happening where we do decide it's appropriate 2 years in a row, but don't want to do a rule change. you know.
Yeah.
I don't know, yeah.
Can you tell me the last time there was a rule change concerning artisans?
Concerning artisans, I don't
Concerning,
know.
like, I remember there was a split in the list, and they allowed a mixing.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, so the question is, when was the last time there was a rule change regarding artisans and their seniority? Anne, I think, answered Luis, used to be the artisans were all at the bottom of the daily list and stayed at the bottom of the daily list.
Yeah, so like if you decided to pick some flowers from your backyard and come to market, you would get to go before Christine.
Market manager Luis decided to integrate the daily lists of artisans and producers. And she was here, I believe,
After Maxine retired.
right after Maxine retired.
Early,
It was before Jessica, before Sarah, before Molly, so like
So
12 or 13 years ago.
12 or 13? No.
No,
it's been more than 15 years.
okay, more than 15 years.
Okay, so I just want it noted that the last time we actually made a rule change concerning this, it was 15 years ago.
Okay, so 15 years ago.
I have a clarification question. The section G in blue, that's the
Yes.
current language?
That was what I sent you.
Oh, okay. Oh, and
That
then,
is not-
and then it came back.
And then it came back
With
from
the
the,
red
with
version.
the new
Okay.
recommendations since I was able to get the packet out.
Okay.
Yes. Okay, so right now I have, the market manager may make a one-time exception to the stall rules in 5A through 5F above in order to facilitate the efficient operation of the market after receiving a resolution of support of the exception by the Public Market Advisory Commission, approval of the exception by Community Services Administrator. Is that right?
I don't, I guess I'm not sure that a one-time exception is actually what
Maybe
we,
we're
what
not
we,
going for
I know that we're thinking about this rule in, sort of in a vacuum, and yet the context here is this issue, right, with the artisan vendors, and a one-time exception isn't going to resolve their concern. At least, it doesn't seem to me that it will. It seems like a year from now, the same discussion will have to happen again, and that they'll be in the same situation. So is there a reason why we're calling this a one-time exception and not just leaving room in here for there to be an exception that's made?
Well, I think if in this situation we decided to change it so that this went to, like, the artisans were integrated and could move up just like the producers, that would be a rule change instead of what we're talking about here. It would be a different kind of rule change.
Right, okay. Okay.
And that is something we might want to look at, but that hasn't been what the conversation is. I think the idea was to quickly address these concerns since it's becoming so disparate, and then maybe in the long run, have the commission look at that as a whole.
So it kind of buys us time to have a longer
so.
process for a more permanent rule change.
Yes, because I think
got it.
a more permanent rule change like that would have a lot more input and take a lot more time.
Got it. Thank you.
And Stephanie, did you add in the temporary or seasonal, or did the lawyer?
The
add?
lawyer did.
So
But we
it's-
don't need it. It's a suggestion. It's also in brackets because it was sort of like, do we need it? Maybe it's not necessary.
I think it adds some ambiguity that we don't understand. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking might be good to just take it out.
Okay. Okay. I think that makes sense. If everyone feels good about that, then with the wording, then I'm going to consider this the final wording and we will submit it to council. But since it is official, I do need a first and a second.
I'll motion to approve the new wording for section 5G.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
We're on to the resolution to move Artisans to annual stalls.
Okay, I'm just going to stay up here because I have more
Yeah.
documents that, okay, again, as I mentioned, it's been sort of an ongoing thing. In your packets, you received our first recommendation, which we talked about at the last meeting, which was to recommend the top 3 artisans on the daily list move to permanent stalls. That was to fill in the 3 empty stalls that were left over at the end of stall assignment last year. Now, I think since then, we've learned 2 artisans on the annual list are retiring, actually. So 2 of the 3 artists will be getting stalls automatically already, which just leaves the one that will, would benefit. I think that when this went out to all the vendors, there was some concern that, we were only making a change, we were making a large change, an exception to the rules that was only going to affect one person, and that there were other artisans on the daily list just below her that were in a very similar situation. So if you look at our daily vendor list, which I will pull up here, it's in your packet. Shuprai and Scott will be moving up automatically, and Ann Shepard, from what we had talked about, was also going to move up into that 3rd extra stall. Janice and Novachkov and Brooks are also just behind Ann in a number of years. They have been at the market.
And they're both artists?
They're both artists. Yes, that's why they're all at the top of this list. They've been there many years. And then once we get down to Beulah Meadows, it's when we get to the producers that have been there for fewer years. So one proposal was to, instead of the leftover stalls, filling them up from last year, we take the leftover stalls after assignment this year, and there will be, there's a total of 18 empty stalls this year. Half go to the producers, or half go to these 2 artisans, and 7 of the producers, so 9, and then half go to vendors that want to add an extra stall that are annual vendors. We're going to have a situation again where we have leftover empty stalls at the end of that process. So if we did the same thing as we had proposed last year, we would be able to assign Ann Novachkov, Shepard, Novachkov, and Brooks permanent stalls if we wanted to, and affect more people. The problem that we run into by doing this, and what Ann has spoken about, was that then if we do that at the end of stall assignment this year, there are 7 producers that are jumping ahead of her that are currently behind her that will be able to pick the stalls before her. But on the other hand, it does solve this problem for more people. So I just kind of wanted to lay that out. That's what that looks like. Also in the packet, I sort of wrote that whole process out, what that could look like. Basically, to help you kind of visualize it, because it's hard to understand when I'm just talking about it. This is the second proposal. Recommend, how do we assign those unassigned stalls at the end of that process? And can some of those stalls go to more artisans? So this suggestion is a third go to artisans, a third go to the new annual vendors that want to add a second stall, and a third we keep empty for flexibility and then for assigning next year. So there are several ways we could handle the fact we're going to have empty stalls. and that was one of them.
Just to clarify, so your proposal, sorry, the numbers are a little confusing.
Okay, yeah,
So we have 1 and 2 are moving up because we have Artisans retiring.
correct.
And then you said there's 18 stalls available this year, 9 of which will go to the daily list.
Correct.
Correct. And you're suggesting that the number 3, 4, and 5 spot, sorry, I didn't understand the
Okay.
whole steps of,
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me go, the stall assignment process. The assignment stall's also in your packet. Sorry, it's confusing if you don't do it every day. Not half go to new dailies on the daily list, that's pretty clear. The other half go to the current annual vendors that want to add another stall.
Half of all open stall, half of all,
Half of all the open stalls.
Open stalls,
Yes, so
so-
there's 18 open
Uh-huh.
stalls. 9 could potentially go to the current annuals that want to add another one. So we have, here you go. If you look at this list, it's all our annual vendors and how many stalls they currently have. That is the number next to them. So our family farm has 2. Rue's Roast has 1. If they wanted, if Brian's wanted to have 2 stalls, that's when he could pick another one. What happened last year, what will happen this year is everybody on this list does not want another stall. So we will have some left over.
potentially 9.
Potentially 9. Yes. Oh, sorry. Those are how many you pay for annually, not how many you have assigned permanently. Most of them are the same, but there are a few that pay for more than they have assigned. Yes.
So, because 2 artisans retired,
Yeah.
there are 2 empty spots
Yeah.
for artisans. Are we at the capacity, the 12, are we still at capacity for artisan vendors at the market?
Do you mean, are we letting a new one?
I don't know what the ratio is supposed to be. Is it 12 to 132?
So I'm just going to talk in the microphones. The question was, are we at capacity for artisan vendors at the market?
Yes, because there's I want to say quorum, but I know that's not.
There's a target, but there is not an actual number or there's no hard ratio.
So without even looking at the empty stalls, because 2 artisans have retired, we would be taking, Carol and I would be taking their spots and move up.
Yes, so the 2 artisans at the top of the daily list, Christine and Carol, will be taking the 2 spots during the daily move up.
And so there were still 3 unspoken for spots from last year.
There will not be still 3 unspoken spots from last year once we begin the process. There are
But there are
now.
18 stalls available.
There are 18 cells available.
Plus 3?
Not plus 3. 18 total. So 15 plus 3.
So just to walk through the steps of what you're describing, so the 9 will be offered to the producers on the daily list?
9 will be offered to daily vendors. 2
Right.
of those are the artisans.
Oh, 2 are the artisans.
That will be
okay.
moving up
So
automatically.
then the 7 will just go to
7
the next 7 producers in line.
7 will go to the next 7 producers.
The 9 will be offered to the annuals, which you believe will not take any of them. And then it bounces to your proposal that of that likely 9, 1/3 will go to the next artisans on the daily list, and then, okay.
Yes, exactly.
That's much clearer. Thank you.
Exactly.
It took me
You
a
got
minute.
it.
But your numbers could fluctuate if there are some annuals that decide to take more stalls. So it could be, it could be 9, it could be 6 in terms of the other stalls that are not taken.
If some annuals decide to take new stalls, that number 9 would change.
Okay,
I don't think it will, but yes, it could.
okay.
So, so if that all goes as planned, we will have 2 artisans moving up into the spots through the normal process, and then likely 3 additional ones.
That would be the effect.
Move up, okay.
Yes.
So kind of what we've been talking about.
Kind of what
All
we've been
along.
talking about. The big
and
change,
Plus a little bit more.
as Anne explained, is that the 3, not the top 2 that automatically move up already, but those next 3 would move up after those 7 producers move up, as opposed to
Oh,
before
I
those
see.
7 producers move up,
Yeah.
which very much impacts when Anne and those producers are able to pick their stalls. But it would stop the process from happening next year, at least for those 3 artisans.
Mhm.
Can I ask a question? If we were gonna give the 3, do we have to be cute about it? Couldn't we just say, we're gonna give 3 spots? Yeah, it's not like a leftover 3, but couldn't we just say we had intended to give 3 and we're just still gonna give 3 extra spots temporarily?
So the question was, do we have to, sorry, I have to say this into the mic. Do we have to be this intentional about it? Can we just say we're going to give 3 to the artisans and just give 3?
Can I request that you hold comments till the end of the meeting? We're just trying to muddle through this, and I know there's a lot of confusion, so.
Yeah. Also, I should mention, we can come up with, what we want our approach to be today, but this does not have to be the final recommendation. We can come back in a month and finalize things. So there will be opportunity for more comment then as well. Yes, so this is one recommendation for using processes that sort of are already in place for this. But, if there is another process that we feel is fair for everyone and makes sense within the rules, then I think it's worth considering as well.
Do you have a recommendation? I mean, I know you talked to, we've heard from some vendors, and so we could assume that we have a pretty good sense of what the impact would be, but we haven't heard from other vendors, and I can imagine that if they had a real concern, maybe they would be here, but do you have a recommendation based on your experience and your discussions with the vendors at the market and what the perceived impact would be?
I would have to say right now, unless we're able to come up with another process that we think is fair, the second proposal is what I'm leaning towards, just because it, I think, brings the most, I think what we're trying to do right now is get rid of some of that inequality, and this does that for the most number of people, well, for the artisans at least. It's really hard because I do see the impact that we'll have on them. And I think that there were expectations when we started this that, it's a little unfair that we're not able to maybe answer those with this recommendation. But I do like that this answers that problem for more people.
When you say the second, what do you,
Sorry.
which one's the second
Yeah, the second, so
recommendation
the
or
first
resolution?
proposal was the one with the 3, getting the top 3 artisans
Okay.
from last year.
Okay.
The
got it.
second proposal is the one with doing it this year. So that's just what I'm leaning toward right now.
I think the goal was also to create a process, right? So that if this comes up in subsequent years, there would be a process in place that even though it's an exception, it could be followed, right? And that you're by this one-third, 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 you're making more of a process for what to do with the leftover stalls.
I just don't know a way to be able to justify doing it for like Shepherd one way first and then differently for the next two artisans on the list since they are so close. If it's just hard for me to figure out a way to say, okay, that's why we're doing it differently for this person. But yeah.
I like this this proposal, and I think it doesn't just address the artisan issue, but it would potentially take care of all these leftover stalls by, the second of the third, going to new annual vendors who could just double up in their first year, because otherwise we just have empty stalls at the market potentially, so that's a good plan.
I think, I think that also in this recommendation, it adds that PMAC look at these rules at least once every 3 years, kind of look at the makeup of the market and look at where we at in terms of seniority. So, it was brought up, well, won't this just happen again with the artisans? And I think that is a longer term problem we do still need to talk about. And also in terms of the fact that I think there are other problems the market has too that are related. Like Wednesdays could be fuller. Is there a way that we can maybe fill that Wednesdays up more? Lots of things to think about, but vendor makeup is definitely something we should be looking at on a regular basis.
I mean, I'd like to see us approve this resolution today because, like you said, there's a month lag for the city council to approve, and we are hoping to move up at the end of August, right?
I think we could still, even if we wait a month, still approve this resolution at our August meeting and then do the stall assignment right after, since we don't have to wait for any response from council for this.
Right, they're just approving
They're just approving the rule
change, which would happen by August.
Which would happen.
Okay.
It's a month, so
Right.
it would happen within a month. So I would like to see, give opportunity, since this is very different from what we had talked about before, for comment, unless anyone feels differently.
You mean for comment at the next meeting from additional
Yes,
members of the public?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, from additional members of the
Yeah,
public.
that sounds good, Stephanie.
Okay. Okay,
Very good.
good. That was that. I can sit down.
Now, we are ready for our market manager report.
Sorry, I'm talking a lot. Okay, so quickly, the gutters have been replaced. Yay! Yay! Brickwork on Detroit continues. So we're still doing, that's part of last year's project, but it's much less impactful as it was last year. So I think market attendance is up because of that, is what I've been hearing. Market infrastructure updates. So we are now looking at building codes and how does adding sidewalls affect building codes? It sounds like it gets a little complicated once you start adding walls to a, not a building, but just a shed. And then it becomes a permanent building. And so how do we do it in a way that it doesn't change our building codes too much? So we are looking into that. WIC Project Fresh and Senior Project Fresh programs have started at the market. So we run those along with our Double Up Food Bucks, SNAP, and credit card tokens. And it's our 100th birthday. So thanks to Commissioner Young, has done a lot of work with us to look into the market's history and the archives. There is an exhibit at the library, actually featuring the Nemeth family, along with some of our other really long-term vendors. That will be up through August 30th, and it's got a lot of really cool old photos and history, just so you can kind of learn about our past. We will be having a birthday bash on the 17th, hopefully with free ice cream and a couple other cool things. Farm to table dinner, we're planning for September 20th. And we will be recording interviews of the vendors, which will also be housed on our website and in the library archives.
Can you tell us how that farm-to-table dinner is going to work, just real quick?
The farm to table dinner, yes. I think we're trying to source as much as we can from the vendors and really just highlight local food and our vendors. And we'll sell tickets. People will be able to buy plates. We'll have some music and that kind of thing, but several chefs making different courses for the meal. The goal is to pay the vendors for the food that we serve. So I'd really like to reimburse them, and just to really celebrate sort of our vendors and our food and highlight those.
Thank you.
Now we'll open up our second public comment period.
So I just want to say again, I strenuously object to that second proposal. I hope that somehow we can find a way. I agree with giving Janice and Dana also spots. I think that would be the right thing to do. We are the top 5 people on the list. We have all been coming for more than 20 years. And to have me and the 2 of them again get skipped over by people who started in 2014. I started in 1997. And someone who started in 2014 will now jump ahead of me and get to pick a spot, and it will mean that I'm not trying to go in the exact same spot. It means I won't even get to go in my row. And maybe in a few years, if more people retire, I'll get back into my row. But it's a huge impact, and I'm just begging that we can find some way to word it so that the 5 of us could pick first. Again, if you go to the post office and there's 20 people in front of you and you get to skip over that last person, you're like, yay, but it's not really a big deal. You've waited for 19 and you get to skip over 1, and that's the advantage these people are going to get. But if you're the person at the front of the line who has 20, or in this case, 10 in 1 year, people skip in front of you, it has a huge impact. And this is my life. I was 25 years old when I started. People who started 3-4 years ago are going to get their annual stalls. I started in 1997, and I will be put back another year, and they will be permanently put ahead of me. And like I said, we don't jump. It's not that I just have to wait just 1 more year to jump in the pool, and then we'll all be in the pool together. They will always be ahead of me, picking ahead of me. And yes, maybe eventually after a few years, I will claw myself back into where I have clawed myself now, again. But that's not good. It's totally unfair, and it's not good. So I hope there's some way that we can please figure out a way to come up with a process that would allow it not to happen that way. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. So theoretically, if she got a stall and she was a permanent vendor, annual vendor, how would that go on the move-up list? Would she jump ahead of our family farm or the Brinery, people who have not been coming since 1997? How would that work?
No.
She would just be the next one, so she would be at the bottom.
Should be at the bottom again.
I'd stay where I am now.
So the seniority doesn't start when they first, even though they're an annual vendor?
The big difference it makes is that the next year, you won't have vendors jump ahead of you.
Okay.
That's the big change. So she'll still have, if she moved up now, she would still have the same seniority she does now, basically.
I'd stay where I am now, and everybody behind me would stay where they are now in relation to me. So I wouldn't go ahead of anybody, and nobody would go ahead of me if I moved up now.
Well, no, so when you move
Yeah.
her to the annual vendor list,
I'll be at the bottom of it.
she'll be at the bottom of it.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I was just curious how that would
I
work.
get what you mean.
Yeah, 'cause that's kind of a unique
Will I
situation.
suddenly be restored to
Right,
1997
right.
and I'll
Oh,
be
yeah.
before
Oh,
Jana and
That's
before
what I was
Tasha?
Yeah.
asking.
No.
But that'd be okay?
Yeah, no, yeah.
I'm wondering, just one more question, sorry. When people move on to the annual list, how much moving around happens before they're really kind of settled into their spot, if that makes sense?
Like, how often do they select a different style from the permanent one?
No, not during the year. I mean, I know every move up, they can take a different permanent stall, right? So that's why seniority matters on the annual list, right? So if a vendor were to choose a permanent stall in 2018, but it wasn't kind of the location that they wanted, they could wait in 2019, they'd have the opportunity to get a different permanent stall location, and that's where seniority matters in that picking.
Yes.
How long does that moving, for the average vendor, moving around until you find your home
Yeah.
happen?
I think Jeff
I,
has-
I would have to say that probably never. There's some people at the top of the list that I know personally that, well, we're up there, and if the right stalls came along, we'd probably move.
Oh, really? So
Yeah.
it's always a process?
Yeah, it's
Considering.
just kind of, things change on, it's,
Okay.
so, average though, you're asking average, just from what I've experienced, and maybe, Stephanie might have a better average than me, but I would have to say it probably happens, it never ends, but it probably slows down after about 2 or 3 moves, I would say. Because, yeah.
There's a complicating factor, which is that I'm an artist who takes 2 stalls, but it will only be allowed to own 1. So I will never be able to stop moving up on a daily basis. I will still have to go in the annual move-up list every single day because I won't be allowed to own 2 stalls ever. So it will matter to me every day, forever, unless we change that.
Yes.
I just want to say once again that I thank you for considering this and realizing that it just doesn't seem fair to vendors that have been there a very long time. And there's just so much divisiveness everywhere we look that considering the market as a place where I've been for so long, I can't stand the divisiveness. I mean, I buy from vendors, they buy from me. It's reciprocal. We are part of the market, and I would like that to be considered. And then to get away from this and contain myself, I think that, Stephanie, it would be really good if you made a point of letting people know about the coin system.
Oh,
Because you did have, we had a presentation here at City Hall, and I don't think it was clear
okay.
to a lot of people. And I think that there's a lot of people that show up at the market and go, oh, I have $3 in my wallet, I can't buy anything. And I don't think they realize that you can take a credit card and put money on it, and that you get money back when you use the nickel. Like if you buy $3 worth, that you get that change back. So I think it would be really good to somehow, I don't know, advertise it
Yeah.
or put a sign outside of the market
Right.
door so that people coming into the market have a better understanding of that.
Right. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further comments, we're ready to adjourn. Do we need a motion?
6,
No.
I think so, yeah, actually,
Okay.
sorry.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and it is 6:25.